In the mid-1800s, your average human might eat around 4 pounds of sugar in an entire year. It was a treat, a luxury, a once-in-a-while thing. By 2017, the average person in the United States was plowing through that same amount in about a week and a half. That's roughly triple what the World Health Organization says is the upper safe limit. So how did we go from special occasion to, you basically live inside a dessert now? To answer that, we need to follow one molecule as it gets discovered as a happy little plant snack, turns into a reason to kidnap millions of people, becomes fuel for factories, wars, and supermarkets, and ends up in your vitamin drink, your sauce, and your healthy granola. Your brain loves sugar. The question is, why did we build an entire global system around that craving? Chapter 1. The first time humans got high on cane. Our story starts in New Guinea, long before energy drinks and vending machines. People there domesticate a tall grass, sugarcane. If you chop it and chew the stalk, the juice hits your tongue and something happens. Your mood lifts, your energy pops, your brain takes notes. From there, sugarcane travels along trade routes into India and China. In India, people figure out how to take this sweet juice and boil it down into solid crystals, little grains that keep, travel, and can be measured and traded. The word sugar comes from an old term meaning tiny gritty pieces. Not very romantic. Your brain doesn't care. Then the Middle Eastern empires get involved. Arab conquerors taste it, love it, and start planting cane wherever they expand. Later, European crusaders show up in the Eastern Mediterranean and run into this sweet stuff too. They bring it home like, we found a plant that turns water into happiness. Sugar isn't just a flavor at this point, it's medicine and magic. Added to drinks for sick people who can't keep food down, used as a tonic for the rich and powerful, reserved for the kind of people who also have musicians at dinner. And remember, this is a world with almost no intense sweetness. If you grow up with nothing but grains, vegetables, and maybe a bit of honey, and then you meet pure sugar, your brain files that under, oh, we like this, a lot. Babies are born preferring sweet over plain water. We're wired for it from the start. Sugar just gives that wiring a direct line. Chapter 2. From crop to machine. For a while, sugar is just another crop grown by farmers as a side hustle. But then Europeans have a terrible idea that they never really stopped having. What if we build entire pieces of land whose only purpose is to churn out one product as cheaply as possible? That's the birth of the plantation system. Sugar plantations start popping up on Mediterranean islands. Then the Spanish and Portuguese drag that model into their Atlantic and American colonies. To make sugar at scale, you need 3 things. 1. Land in a climate warm enough for cane. 2. Mills and boiling houses to crush and cook it. 3. A huge number of people you don't have to pay properly. At first, empires experiment with local forced labor and white indentured workers. Not enough sign up, too many die, so they turn to Africa. Chapter 3. Sugar and the Stolen Millions. European traders plug into existing systems of enslavement and expand them massively. Over the centuries, around 12.5 million Africans are kidnapped or bought, chained, shipped across the Atlantic, and forced to work, many of them on sugar plantations. Not all enslaved people end up in sugar, but sugar takes a horrifyingly big share. It's brutal work, petting under a vicious sun with blades, dragging it to mills, feeding stalks into rollers that can easily grab your arm. Once cane is cut, the clock starts. You have roughly a couple of days to crush it and get the juice before it spoils. No break, no delay. The juice is then boiled in big pans over raging fires, reduced down into syrup and crystals. If you've ever burned yourself making caramel, imagine that, but industrial. If the boiling syrup splashes on you, it keeps burning as long as it clings to your skin. The mills, the boiling houses, the fields, they chew up people as ruthlessly as they chew up cane. Sugar is no longer just a plant, it's a machine. And that machine runs on human lives. Chapter 4. Sweetness Rewires Europe. As plantations multiply and enslaved people are worked to death and replaced, the price of sugar falls. Suddenly, it's not just kings and dukes making sugar sculptures to show off at feasts. Middle-class households start buying sugar loaves. Paintings of ordinary families begin to feature sugar as a quiet flex. Cheaper sugar does a few important things. It makes bitter drinks like coffee and tea easier to love. It turns sweets and pastries into everyday treats instead of rare miracles. It gives workers quick, dense calories in a world with long hours and brutal jobs. In places like Britain, tea loaded with sugar becomes the unofficial fuel of the working class. Toast with jam, sweet tea, cheap energy from faraway fields. And the desire for sugar links to bigger global moves. European powers fight, smuggle, and even wage wars partly to secure access to tea and sugar trade routes. The Industrial Revolution in Britain runs not only on coal and steam, but on calories shipped in barrels and crates from plantations across the ocean. Meanwhile, the people at the bottom of that chain are still cutting cane. Chapter 5. We don't want blood in our teacup. Eventually, people start to notice the moral horror behind the sweetness. Religious groups and activists begin publishing pamphlets and essays arguing that every spoonful of sugar is soaked in human suffering. Their logic is simple and brutal. If we buy the product, we help pay for the system. People organize what is basically one of the first consumer boycotts in history. Refuse sugar from enslaved labor, pressure politicians, amplify stories of rebellions and conditions in the colonies. They even develop little social signals, sugar bowls and patterns that say, "We're using clean sugar," the old-school version of an ethical label. Of course, entire industries are built on slavery by this point. Shipbuilders, rope makers, gun makers, merchants, insurers, all feeding off the same system. None of them want it to stop. But between uprisings in the colonies, political shifts, and consumer pressure, some empires eventually abolished the slave trade and then slavery in their territories. Did that instantly make sugar ethical? No, it just changed the rules. Chapter 6. New chains with new names. Once outright slavery becomes harder to legally defend, sugar producers don't suddenly grow a conscience. They just switch tactics. They start moving workers around the world under contracts. Indians shipped to Caribbean islands. Javanese sent to other colonies. Chinese and Europeans moved across oceans with promises they often don't understand. These contracts give plantation owners extreme control. Workers are tied to the land, punished harshly, and live in conditions not much safer than before. In some regions, huge numbers of these contract workers die before their term is up. The label on the system changes. The power imbalance doesn't. Chapter 7. Beet sugar and the overflow problem. Now comes the plot twist. Sugar doesn't have to come from cane. During the 1800s, wars and blockades cut Europe off from cane imports at times. So governments and scientists scramble. Can we get sugar from something that actually grows here? They experiment with all kinds of plants. The winner, the sugar beet. Beets can grow in colder climates. That means Europe can have its own sugar factories without relying entirely on tropical colonies. But there's a catch. It costs more to make sugar from beets than from cane. So beet sugar producers go to their governments and say, "We can't compete unless you help." They get subsidies, tariffs protecting them from cane imports. Protected like this, they ramp up production. By the early 1900s, the world is drowning in sugar. But there's only so much people choose to eat, unless you train them to want more. Chapter 8. Teaching people to crave sugar. If you're a sugar producer sitting on a growing mountain of product, you have one mission: turn luxury into necessity. World wars become an opportunity. Soldiers get sugar built into their rations. Chocolate, sweet drinks, sugary snacks. It's not just calories. It's comfort, reward, and morale. After the wars, companies redirect that same energy toward civilians. Suddenly, the message is, "You're too busy? Here, instant orange drink. No time for a big breakfast? Have cereal out of a box." Those cereals? Some are basically candy pretending to be breakfast. Sugar gets added to bread, sauces, canned goods, energy bars, vitamin drinks. And then soda arrives as the perfect sugar delivery system. A drink you can keep sipping without getting full, loaded with sugar in a form your body absorbs extremely fast. Companies pour marketing money onto children. Cartoons, toys in the box, mascots, jingles, bright colors. The goal is simple: make sugar the background noise of childhood and life. Chapter 9. The Obesity Alarm and the Great Distraction. By the late 1900s, something is clearly wrong. Rates of obesity, heart disease, and type 2 diabetes are climbing in rich countries. Scientists look for culprits. There are voices pointing to sugar and refined carbs, but those voices don't always get the microphone. The food industry, especially sugar interests, has a strong preference: blamed fat. So for decades you get low-fat yogurt with tons of sugar, low-fat cookies with sugar, low-fat everything with sugar. The story people hear is, fat is the enemy, avoid it and you're fine. Meanwhile, the amount of sugar and refined carbs in processed foods quietly stays high, or goes higher. In 1999, global health authorities finally say it clearly: we're in the middle of an obesity pandemic, and our sweet, ultra-processed diets are a massive part of it. But by then, sugar has already wormed its way into almost every aisle of the supermarket. Chapter 10. One spoon, one system. Here's the scary part. Sugar itself isn't evil. Your body can handle sugar. Your brain even runs partly on glucose. The problem is the system we built around it. Try this mental experiment. Walk through a typical grocery store and mentally delete everything that depends on added sugar. Not just obvious candy, but flavored yogurts, most cereals, ketchup and pasta sauce, many breads, soft drinks and sports drinks, healthy snack bars, flavored coffees and teas. The store starts to look weirdly empty. Now zoom out to the world map. Most cane sugar comes from countries in the global south, hotter, often poorer. Most beet sugar comes from wealthier, colder countries in the global north. Beet is still more expensive to produce, but heavily subsidized beet industries have historically dumped cheap sugar on world markets, undercutting cane producers. That's not a free market, that's a tilted board. Sugar is a case study in how global capitalism works. Production is pushed to faraway places with cheaper labor and looser protections. Richer countries protect their own industries with subsidies and trade rules. Consumers are trained to overeat a cheap product with hidden costs. Yes, this system brings down prices and lifts some people out of poverty. It also hides a lot of damage. To workers, to ecosystems, to your future health. All inside something that looks like an innocent spoonful of sweetness.
Chapter 11. What now? You're not going to personally dismantle 500 years of sugar history with one grocery trip. But you do have more control than it feels like. A few moves. Spot the hidden sugar. Flip labels. Look at sugar and carbs instead of just buzzwords on the front. Drinks are a huge, sneaky source. Treat sweetness like a flavor, not a background setting. If everything tastes intensely sweet, your brain's normal gets warped. Dialing back lets you taste actual food again. Support better supply chains when you can. Fair trade sugar and chocolate aren't perfect, but they shift more power and money toward farmers instead of just middlemen and giant brands. Remember the history. Sugar isn't just in your pantry. It's in the story of slavery, colonization, industrialization, and modern health. The first people who refused slave-grown sugar didn't fix the system overnight, but they changed the conversation. They proved that what you buy and what you refuse to buy has weight. Sugar shows us something uncomfortable. Your cravings can be turned into an economic engine. That engine can shape laws, borders, diets, and lives on the other side of the world. So the next time you stir sugar into your drink, you're not just sweetening the taste. You're tapping into a long, sticky chain of history. The question isn't, is sugar good or bad? The real question is, how much of your life, and whose lives, are you willing to spend to keep everything this sweet? And that's the wild, tangled, surprisingly dark journey of the sweetest substance on Earth. If this video melted your brain just a little bit, in the good way, then you know what to do. If you enjoyed this video and want more like it, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, keep chewing on facts.